Why didn't I learn about the 40? I'm sorry. The first time I've ever heard about the 47-year Iran war was like this year. Like, we don't teach about the 47-year war with Iran in school. Like, it's insulting to actual conflicts that we've been involved in.
You have no idea what the Iranians have done to us for 47 years.
How many Americans have they killed on U.S. soil in 47 years in the war that we've been in?
They have killed thousands of Americans. They have maimed American soldiers.
Yeah,
they have attacked American allies, and they have been at war with the West ever since this regime came to power. And it is their intention to build a nuclear weapon and use it on us and use it on Israel and use it on the West. That is their intention, and they state it every day.
No, they intend to just keep using the Strait of Hormuz. They have now learned that they can behave like a nuclear power without ever needing to be one. But, okay, so, like, if we're going to keep going with this, what number of American troops are we willing to commit to keep going? And, like, what's your number? Like, how many U.S. troops are you willing to expend to achieve your objectives? And what amount of money? Because, like, we're not having that conversation. And we need to, because we've already spent $300 billion. We've already lost. Like,
what amount of money am I willing to expend
we need to answer
to keep the American people safe from the worst regime in the world? A fair amount.
What happens when a president declares that diplomacy is working, only for military strikes to resume just weeks later? That's the question millions of Americans are asking right now. The Trump administration is once again facing intense scrutiny after its agreement with Iran appeared to collapse. Renewed strikes were launched, and reports of an alleged Iranian plot targeting President Trump added another layer of uncertainty to an already dangerous situation. This isn't just another foreign policy story. It's about leadership, credibility, national security, and the real impact these decisions could have on everyday Americans. From global stability to the economy here at home. In today's video, we're going to break down exactly what happened, examine the heated debates surrounding these developments, and separate the facts from the political spin so you can decide for yourself what it all means. Before we dive in, if you enjoy honest, in-depth political analysis that cuts through the noise, make sure you hit the like button, share this video with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us grow and keeps these conversations going. And be sure to watch until the very end, because I'll share my final thoughts on what this latest escalation could mean for America's future. Let's get into it.
It's over. That's how President Trump is describing the 60-day agreement that he had signed with Iran just 21 days ago.
It was predictable in two ways. There's a long-term animosity by the Islamic Republic against the United States. This is part of the DNA of this regime. That is to say, their mistrust is really not rooted in the fact that President Trump ripped up the JCPOA or reneged on other kinds of deals. This is whatever the United States does, the Iranian regime believes that it is an enemy of the United States. That's the long-term issue. The short-term issue that I think was predictable was the fact that the MOU was, in fact, so ambiguous and gave the store away so much to the Iranians, in my view, that what the Iranians, and I've been following internal media from Iran, is they think that the MOU represents a moment of weakness in the United States, and so they're going to not lose the opportunity for a historic opportunity to grab the Straits of Hormuz. And in other words, it doesn't matter what's in the MOU, what they promised. They are not going to give up their what they see as a historic opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to not see what Kian is describing, because Trump thinks that, however many days of bombed Iran into submission, when in fact, not only has the opposite happened, they are exerting control of the Strait of Hormuz, they've come to the negotiating table, they're treated as equals, but it seems to have hardened Iran in a position that is adversarial to us. This past week, during the funeral for the now dead supreme leader of Iran, the Iranian president was attacked by a crowd of hardline supporters, according to the New York Times. They were shouting death to the appeaser because he was at the negotiating table with Trump. Another government official, the foreign minister, Agarachi, was assaulted with a rock on Monday as he was chased down an alley during the funeral, again, for sitting down with Trump. So they are getting it from the hardliners, and the people at the negotiating table are losing.
Yeah, I don't agree that this conflict has somehow hardened Iran even further. I think they were already as adversarial to the United States as they could be. They've been adversarial to us for 47 years. And it was this president that decided to try to do something about it. He also tried to give diplomacy a chance. I concur that, there was always a high percentage chance the Iranians were never going to come to the table here in a meaningful way in good faith. I'm not surprised it's ending this way. The morning that the president signed the MOU, I talked to him and he said to me, as he'd said publicly, look, if they don't behave and they don't meet their obligations, we'll go back to the military campaign. That's what he has decided to do. And now it may just be time to say, look, we're not going to have some grand peace deal. We're going to have to monitor these guys. We're probably going to have to hit them from time to time. We are going to keep enough oil flowing through the strait. We're going to move other oil producing nations away from reliance on the strait. They're not going to get a penny in sanctions relief. And, and the outcomes here are we've destroyed their military and turned all their neighbors against them. That's a way to declare victory out of this. And I don't know if that's what the president will do.
That seems like not a victory at all.
They don't control the strait.
Because they already got 20 days of sanctions relief. The Iranians are still exerting some control over the Strait of Hormuz. And on top of that, we are committing ourselves to indefinite bombing.
Right.
How does that work in our favor?
They're bombing other countries. The Strait of Hormuz is essentially a contested area. You can say it's easy for everyone to get through, but it's contested. That is a problem for the global economy. It is, I think the real problem here is that the president cannot get a face-saving deal out of the Iranians. And that is why he's back to bombing. But as a reminder to everyone, when there are bombings of Iran, essentially we all pay more for gas because prices of gas and prices of oil go up as they did today. And I think this is the conundrum that the president is in.
What's the price of gas today?
It's the barrel went up to $78 crude. So
what's the price of a gallon of gas in the United States right now?
It's $4.30.
No, negative.
But Scott,
and what was the highest price of gas under?
No, I don't. That's
Did
not.
Did you ever conduct
Scott,
a
that's
meeting
actually
about
not the
gas
question.
Yes,
The question is how are what is
gas is lower today than it was
Scott,
before he?
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
$3.20.
Gas is not lower today than when Trump took office, and it's not lower today than it was before Trump started the war. So look, you can dismiss the gas thing, but it's a real thing that people are going to the gas pump, filling up their tank, and it's costing them $70.
I appreciate conservatives don't care.
On January 20, 2025. Just saying.
It's less.
Yeah, we're at a lower Brent crude price today than we were on January 20.
What is the price at the pump compared to when Trump came to office?
It varies.
The average gas price is higher today than it was when Trump came to office.
Lower you then.
But look, let's go back to where are we in this war? The president seems to have made a complete 180. I'm trying to see the people who have said that President Trump doesn't seem to know what he's doing seem to be getting a lot of evidence, given the fact that 21 days later, he has decided all of a sudden that the people that he said were trustworthy and were completely different. And we've turned a corner. And J.D. Vance said that the Iranians have changed for good and they want to approach the world differently. And now he's saying the exact opposite. It seems like they don't really know what's going on.
No, the very simple response is that when the Iranians are abiding by the terms that they agreed with, Trump will say nice things about them. When they are not, he won't. They go back to compliance.
How do you explain them saying that? How do you explain them saying that they have changed? That's a different thing.
Okay, can I add an angle to that? Look, I think that, we've been at this, the Americans, for many, many years. I was involved as a civil society activist working, going to the White House, going to the State Department, telling about how to negotiate with the Iranians. One of the ways to make sense of this apparent switch about who these people are is that they're talking about different people. That is to say, the United States, and I'm sorry to say this, has fallen for the trap that the Iranians have laid for every administration. First of all, personally, I think it's very undignified that the Vice President of the United States is our representative with someone who the counterpart is really just the fourth level person in Iran. This guy Ghalibaf, he is not in this. So, but what happens is that he sent, unfortunately, in my view, Vice President Vance to meet with a group of diplomats. These are the smoothest, most sophisticated diplomats you can find. They will tell you whatever you want to hear in public. And remember, I said this, I think, on the show last time, is that in the Middle East, you have to understand what anyone says to you in private, in English, is meaningless. It's only what they say in their own language and publicly that has any meaning. So what happens
and that's the opposite of what people would expect in the West.
It's different from the United States, where, politicians,
maybe not so different
lie in public and tell the truth off record. But it's exactly the opposite in Iran. So what happened? So Vance and Wickoff, apparently, and Trump didn't realize this. They went to Istanbul. They heard, first of all, there was no photograph of Vance and Ghalibaf in the same room. By the way, that's a kind of scoop. I mean, there is no evidence that they were actually in the same room.
Red flag.
Well, they had mediators, right? Weren't they in separate?
Well, that's the other thing. The United States should never have accepted this absurd. The Iranians can't impose the terms of the deal. So what happens is the people that Vance reported to Trump that, I'm talking with these people and they're very rational. Well, they are. I've met them too. They're very smooth. But the people who are shooting at the ships are different. They are the IRGC and the leadership, and they don't care what the diplomats are saying.
So that's why you bomb those guys and you don't bomb the diplomats you're talking to.
One of the problems is that
we just got suckered in this field because we're
one of the problems, I think, for the Trump administration
a little bit of that, I think,
is that they already used the war card. The problem with using the war card early and often is that it loses its effect as it goes along, because now we're searching for targets. We're rebombing the same targets, and it's almost like playing whack-a-mole with this regime. And that is the problem that they're facing right now. Every time they go in for strikes, it's degrading a little bit, but Iran keeps coming back, and they're still the problem that they were 4 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger problem in the strategy is that Iran from the beginning has been fighting a different type of war than the type of war we want to fight. It's like we want to get into a fist fight with people who have understood that Americans in this country do not have a stomach for an endless war, don't want it, definitely don't have stomach for higher gas prices. And so they know that they are okay with suffering. We are not. That is the biggest leverage that they have. And so because they have that leverage, well, now it looks as if our government has been exposed of being incompetent and not knowing what they're doing. So to me, the Iranians have been able to win the narrative war because they don't want, they know what we can't stomach.
The truth is, the president won't put down troops there, right? Because he knows, that would be an important event.
Learned our lessons from Iraq and Afghanistan, that you don't go in with a land invasion to try to change a regime. You try to do that through the
least effective way ever.
Worked in Bosnia, has worked in the past in our efforts to control and to change the direction.
But it has actually, that's not true. There's no example of a war by air successfully alone changing a regime. Sources tell CNN that Israel has warned the United States of a new Iranian plot to assassinate President Trump.
I think we can all agree that if Iran were to assassinate President Trump, that would be wrong, because it is wrong to assassinate leaders of sovereign nations, which is why we should have never assassinated the Ayatollah and replaced him with a younger version. But I don't think Iran wants to assassinate President Trump, because if they were to do that, that would create a rally around the flag effect for this war in the United States that we have not seen yet, and would almost 100% guarantee that the United States has no choice but to launch a full-on ground invasion of Iran, which is the one thing Iran does not want. They have figured out what we have not figured out, which is that this is an economic war. Okay, this war does not have a military solution. We've exhausted all the good military options. What Iran has figured out is war is about studying your opponent. And they've studied President Trump very well. And I think it was just last week, President Trump said, my biggest fear is being Herbert Hoover. I do not want to be the guy who crashes the U.S. stock market. And Iran has studied that. And what they've learned is the playbook is, it's a really nice stock market you've got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it.
Yeah, he called it a risk of economic catastrophe. And Iran sees that, and they're using the leverage that they have. The Journal had an interesting take on this, which is that the MOU had this part about the Strait of Hormuz that was so poorly written that the U.S. thought that it opened up the Strait of Hormuz. But meanwhile, Iran reads it and they say, oh, actually, we control this strait. We're the ones who are going to decide who comes in and out. And now here we are.
I think it speaks to the flippant nature of the whole situation. I mean, if we're being honest, I think if most Americans are being honest with themselves, this whole crisis, this war was created as a shiny object to distract so many folks from the chaos that was around this administration at the time. And what looked to be was promised a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, is now turned into some sort of endless, unprojectable end. And it speaks to the serious nature of this. It speaks to the grave danger that not only the region, but the world sits upon. And there's really two outcomes. There's either the U.S. is going to give in to Iran, continue to give and give and give and give, or we're going to have to commit ourselves and our troops and our military to some sort of effort that is going to blow us away for extended periods of time. It's going to break a lot of people's mindsets as to what Donald Trump's true intentions are there. That's the ultimatum. There is no way to negotiate. This is a propaganda war. Donald Trump is using propaganda and he's propping up the markets. He's not talking to diplomats. He's not talking to generals on an hourly basis. He's talking to financial experts that are telling him when markets are closing, when markets are opening, and when PR needs to be pushed out to change the narrative.
Scott?
You seem to know exactly who Donald Trump is talking to. How do you know that?
Well, just as an American watching it play out, it certainly feels as though there's no sort of organized fashion of what's going on.
You said he's not talking to generals, that he's only talking to economic planners. I'm just asking how you know that. It just seems to be a wild assertion. I just wonder what evidence of that there is.
As a tax-paying American, I sit there and I watch this stuff play out within minutes after the markets close. I watch before markets open.
So no evidence. So here's what I think. I think we achieved a great military victory. The Iranian military is devastated. I disagree with Max. I don't think they're currently on the brink of building a nuclear weapon because they can't be because of the military victory that we have achieved.
I didn't say they were on the brink of building a nuclear weapon.
You said we have made any progress.
I said we have not eradicated their nuclear program. Like Trump said, they have 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium. They still have it.
Yeah, and it's buried beneath a significant amount of rubble.
And then they can take it out of there when they want to.
Thanks to the United States military. So that's number one. Number two.
Don't mischaracterize what I said,
After the military victory, they gave diplomacy a chance. And as the president said repeatedly, he always said, I would like to have a deal. I'm prepared for them to not behave, in which case they get nothing, and we have to go back to a military option, which is where we are today. Where it ends, I don't know. There hasn't been as much volatility in the oil market the last couple of days as some people might have projected, which is a good thing. But I do think it's true that they are not interested in rational outcomes here. And this whole threat to assassinate our president, just say one other thing, for all the people out there who've been crapping on our relationship with Israel and what we do with Israel and our alliance with Israel, they gave us intelligence to help us keep our president from being assassinated.
I think we need to focus on our intelligence, though, because our intelligence, if we listen to our intelligence, maybe we should start listening to our own intelligence, because not listening to our own intelligence agencies is how we got into this war. Our intelligence agencies assessed that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. That assessment has not changed throughout this war.
Israel also gave us intelligence telling us that the Iranian regime was about to fall, and that proved to be terribly false. I also think that there is a bigger foreign policy mess here. If you'll remember, January 3rd extricated Maduro out of Venezuela for what was supposed to be interim elections shortly afterwards. Venezuela has now been hit by 2 devastating earthquakes, and the Maduro vice president and his entire regime is still in place. They're completely incapable and inept to responding to these earthquakes. We saw this week U.S. officials, Southcom officials, greeting and hugging and meeting with the worst of the offenders, the executor of the oppression in Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello. And he couldn't, you see, so we couldn't be in Iran when 50,000 Iranians were getting slaughtered in the streets because a fourth or a third of the U.S. Navy was off the coast of Venezuela. And that now is a hot mess. The woman who gave him the peace prize, she's not even allowed back in her country. And there is nothing this administration is doing to do that. Iran is a quagmire. It feels like every other day they tell us that this is about to end, and it doesn't end. And Cuba, you got 10 million people without electricity, a grid that has completely collapsed, and a bunch of Cuban Americans in Miami wondering when the hell it's going to be their turn.
So to your point about whether this will be a quagmire, one of our viewers has a question. Where does the panel think that the U.S. will be a year from now in Iran? I mean, Max, you suggested that it's like an on-again, off-again conflict. But where does that end? Are we going to do that forever?
Well, to coin a term, Abby, it looks an awful lot like a forever war. You know, one of those forever wars that Trump was promising to end, and he just started one, and he doesn't know how to get out of it because he thought that the Iranian regime would fall within a few days, which no serious intelligence analyst, which the U.S. intelligence community, nobody really believed that. But Trump seemed to think that because Netanyahu told him that. Clearly, that's not the case. He doesn't have an exit strategy, and so we're basically stuck with this hostile regime, which is as big of a threat as ever to the rest of the region.
But if Republicans lose the House and or the Senate, can that change? Can a Democratic House and or Senate put some guardrails on Trump?
I doubt it because, you know, he has huge authority as commander in chief. He doesn't listen to Congress. I'm not sure that there's much that can. The only authority
for what?
The only authority he recognizes, as we were discussing earlier, is the market. So he doesn't want to do something that thanks the market.
Guardrails for what? To go back to a world where we're all rainbows and unicorns with the Iranians? They've been at war with us for 47 years.
Rainbows and unicorns.
47 years? Okay.
Nobody has been rainbows and unicorns with the Iranians.
Why didn't I learn about the 40? I'm sorry. The first time I've ever heard about the 47-year Iran war was like this year. Like, we don't teach about the 47-year war with Iran in school. Like, it's insulting to actual conflicts that we've been involved in.
That you have no idea what the Iranians have done at war with Iran for 47 years.
How many Americans have they killed on U.S. soil in 47 years in the war that we've
They have killed thousands of Americans. They have maimed American soldiers.
Yeah,
they have attacked American allies, and they have been at war with the West ever since this regime came to power. And it is their intention to build a nuclear weapon and use it on us and use it on Israel and use it on the West. That is their intention, and they state it every day.
No, they intend to just keep using the Strait of Hormuz. They have now learned that they can behave like a nuclear power without ever needing to be one. But, okay, so, like, if we're going to keep going with this, what number of American troops are we willing to commit to keep going? And, like, what's your number? Like, how many U.S. troops are you willing to expend to achieve your objectives? And what amount of money? Because, like, we're not having that conversation, and we need to, because we've already spent $300 billion. We've already lost. Like, those are the questions we need to answer
to keep the American people safe from the worst regime in the world? A fair amount.
The end of the day, this story is about much more than one military decision or one political headline. It's about whether the United States has a clear strategy for dealing with one of the most volatile regions in the world. When the messaging changes so quickly, from optimism about diplomacy to renewed military action, it's only natural for Americans to ask tough questions. That's not being unpatriotic. That's what accountability looks like in a democracy. Whether you support President Trump or strongly disagree with him, every American should want leaders who are transparent, consistent, and focused on protecting both our national security and our economic stability. These are serious decisions with consequences that extend far beyond Washington. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think the administration has a clear strategy, or are we watching another conflict with no obvious end? Let me know in the comments below, because respectful debate is how we all stay informed. If you found this analysis helpful, please take a second to hit the like button, share this video with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth political commentary and breaking news analysis. Your support truly helps this channel grow and allows us to keep bringing you thoughtful discussions on the stories shaping our democracy. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you in the next video.